Jack Miller sat on his porch, the Montana sunset painting the sky orange and pink. His German shepherd, Scout, lay at his feet. The dog's ears perked up when Jack sighed deeply. "What do you think about aliens, buddy?" Jack asked, reaching down to scratch behind Scout's ears. Scout looked up with intelligent eyes and tilted his head. The news had been full of nothing else for 3 days. Aliens had arrived on Earth. Real, actual aliens from another star system. Jack took a sip from his coffee mug. He had seen many things during his time as a Marine, but nothing had prepared him for this. The Xeraxian Federation, they called themselves. His phone buzzed. It was a message from his sister, Kate. "Are you watching this? Turn on the TV." Jack stood up slowly, his left knee aching slightly where shrapnel had once torn through it. Scout followed him inside their small cabin. Jack had built most of it himself after leaving the service. It was simple, sturdy, and quiet. Exactly what he needed after the war. He turned on the television and found the news channel. The screen showed a group of tall, thin beings with bluish-gray skin and large, dark eyes. They stood nearly 7 feet tall, with long limbs that moved with strange grace. These were the Xeraxians, meeting with world leaders in what reporters were calling a historic cultural exchange. Jack sat on his worn couch, and Scout jumped up next to him, pressing against his side. The dog had been by Jack's side through the worst nights when the nightmares came and his mind took him back to places he'd rather forget. Scout could sense the attacks coming sometimes, even before Jack could. The camera zoomed in on one of the aliens, who was speaking in a strange, musical language. A translator's voice overlaid in English. "We are pleased to learn about your civilization," the alien said, "though many of your customs are puzzling to us." "What aspects of human life do you find most difficult to understand?" asked a human diplomat. The alien, identified as Ambassador Krellix, made a gesture with long, 6-fingered hands. "Your relationship with non-sapient species is most confusing, particularly those you call pets." Jack felt Scout shift against him. He placed a hand on the dog's warm fur. On screen, another alien stepped forward. "We have observed that humans dedicate significant resources, food, shelter, medical care, to animals that provide no practical function. This seems highly inefficient." Scout yawned and rested his head on Jack's lap. Jack smiled and stroked the dog's head. Scout had been much more than a pet. He had been Jack's service dog after his medical discharge, trained to help with his PTSD. More than that, Scout had been his lifeline during the darkest days. The alien continued. "In our society, all relationships must serve clear purposes. We do not waste energy on non-productive bonds." A human scientist on the panel tried to explain. "Pets provide companionship and emotional support. Studies show they reduce stress and improve mental health." The aliens looked at each other, their expressions unreadable to human eyes. "Emotional attachments to lesser beings seem like evolutionary flaws," said one of the Xeraxians. "Perhaps humans formed these bonds due to deficiencies in your social structures." Jack felt his jaw tighten. Scout sensed the change in his mood and looked up at him. "It's okay, boy," Jack whispered, but his hand had formed a fist in Scout's fur. The Xeraxian continued. "We find it amusing that humans speak to these creatures as if they understand complex language. You attribute human-like thinking to animals, with simple neural patterns." The human panelists looked uncomfortable. One tried to change the subject, but Ambassador Krellix raised a hand. "We mean no offense. We simply observe that intelligent beings should form bonds with equals, not with creatures that would serve better as research subjects or nutrition." Jack stood up suddenly. Scout jumped off the couch, alert and watching his master. "Research subjects," Jack said to the empty room. "Nutrition?" On screen, the aliens continued. "Perhaps this attachment to lesser species explains why humans have developed so slowly compared to other intelligent races. You waste resources on useless organisms instead of focusing on advancement." Jack paced across his small living room, Scout watching him carefully. The dog had seen this behavior before when Jack was fighting his inner demons. "They don't get it, Scout. They don't understand a damn thing about us." Jack knelt down and wrapped his arms around the dog's neck. Scout licked his face once, a simple gesture that had pulled Jack back from the edge more times than he could count. The television continued in the background. The Zeraxians were now suggesting that human emotions toward animals were a sign of cognitive weakness, that these bonds held humanity back from reaching their potential. Jack stood and walked to his laptop. He opened it and began typing. The Zeraxian embassy had announced a program for ordinary citizens to participate in cultural exchange sessions. Applications were being accepted now. What do you think, Scout? Should we teach some aliens about what dogs really mean to humans? Scout wagged his tail and barked once. Jack smiled as he filled out the application form. He had faced tougher enemies than arrogant aliens. He had the scars to prove it. And Scout had been there through it all. He hit submit on the application. Maybe they'll pick us, maybe they won't, Jack told Scout as he closed the laptop. But somebody needs to set them straight. That night, Jack dreamed of his time in combat. The explosions, the gunfire, the chaos. But as always, Scout was there in the dream, guiding him to safety, bringing him back to reality. When he woke, sweating and disoriented, Scout was already beside him, a warm, living anchor to the present. Thanks, buddy, Jack whispered, his hand finding Scout's fur in the darkness. 2 days later, an email arrived that would change everything. Jack Miller had been selected for the Zeraxian Cultural Exchange Program. He and 11 other citizens would meet with the aliens to foster better understanding between species. Jack read the email twice, then looked at Scout, who sat watching him with those intelligent eyes. Well, boy, looks like we're going to meet some aliens. He knelt down and held Scout's face between his hands. And we're going to teach them a lesson about what it really means to be human. Scout wagged his tail as if he understood every word. Jack stared at the massive structure that housed the Zeraxian embassy in Denver. The building looked like nothing built by human hands, all sweeping curves and materials that seemed to shift colors in the sunlight. It had been constructed in just 3 days using technology that amazed Earth's best engineers. He touched Scout's collar in his pocket. They wouldn't let him bring the dog, but having something of Scout's made Jack feel better. He had driven 8 hours to get here, stopping at a cheap motel overnight. Now he stood with 11 other selected citizens waiting to enter. Nervous? Asked the woman next to him. She had short red hair and a friendly smile. A little, Jack admitted. I'm Jack. Diane, she said, offering her hand. I'm a veterinarian. When I heard those aliens talk about pets being useless, I knew I had to apply. Jack nodded. I have a German shepherd named Scout. He's a service dog. Was technically, but he's family now. I bet they don't understand that at all, Diane said. A young man in a suit approached the group. Hello, everyone. I'm Ben Harris from the State Department. I'll be escorting you in shortly. Just a few ground rules first. The group gathered around him. Jack noticed how different they all were, young and old, different backgrounds, different reasons for being there. The Zeraxians have agreed to this meeting as a gesture of goodwill, Ben explained. They're genuinely interested in understanding humans better. That said, they can be direct. What we might consider rude, they consider efficient communication. A woman raised her hand. Are we allowed to be direct back? Ben smiled tightly. Be respectful but honest. This isn't a diplomatic crisis in the making, just a cultural exchange. You were all selected because your applications showed thoughtfulness. Jack wondered if his application had really shown thoughtfulness. He had written about Scout and what the dog meant to him. Maybe that was enough. Another staff member joined them. She was tall with dark hair pulled back in a neat bun. Hello, everyone. I'm Lisa Ortega, liaison to the Zeraxian cultural team. Please follow me. They walked through security scanners that hummed with strange energy. Jack felt a slight tingling as he passed through. Inside, the building was even stranger. The walls seemed alive somehow, with subtle patterns that moved if you looked at them too long. Lisa led them to a large circular room with a central table. Please be seated. Ambassador Krelix will join you shortly. Jack sat down, feeling out of place. He had worn his best shirt and jeans, but most others were more formally dressed. He touched Scout's collar in his pocket again. A door Jack hadn't noticed before slid open, and 3 Xeraxians entered. They moved with that same strange grace he had seen on television. Up close, they were even more alien. Their skin had subtle patterns almost like circuit boards, and their eyes were deep and dark. "Greetings," said the one in front, voice musical but clearly artificial coming from a small device at its throat. "I am Ambassador Krellex. These are cultural specialists Brenda and Taylock." Lisa facilitated introductions around the table. When it was Jack's turn, he simply said, "Jack Miller, former Marine, Montana." Krellex's large eyes focused on him. "You have traveled far. Your input must be valuable." The meeting began with general questions about human culture. The aliens were particularly interested in family structures, art, and entertainment. They seemed puzzled by many concepts humans took for granted. "We understand you all applied specifically to discuss the topic of pets," Brenda said eventually. "This concept remains perplexing to us." Diane spoke first, explaining the history of animal domestication and the health benefits of pet ownership. Others shared stories of their own animals. Jack stayed quiet, listening. The aliens asked clinical questions focusing on practical aspects. "But what function do these animals serve that technology cannot?" Taylock asked. "We have machines for protection, for hunting, for all practical purposes." "It's not about function," an older man explained. "It's about connection." Jack finally spoke up. "My dog scout helped me through PTSD after my service. No machine could have done what he did." Krellex tilted his head. "Post-traumatic stress disorder, a psychological condition. Why would an animal be effective for treatment?" "Because he knows when I'm not okay before I do," Jack said. "He wakes me from nightmares. He brings me back when I'm lost in memories." "The animal can sense biochemical changes in your body," Brenda suggested. "This is a practical function." Jack shook his head. "It's more than that. Scout chooses to help me. He could run away, but he stays. He cares." Taylock made a sound that the translator didn't catch. "You attribute emotions and decision-making to a creature with limited cognitive ability." "Spend a day with Scout and you'd understand," Jack said, his voice growing firmer. "He's not just an animal. He's my friend." The aliens exchanged looks that Jack couldn't interpret. "In our evolutionary history," Krellex explained, "our species never formed cooperative relationships with other creatures. We evolved as solitary hunters. The concept of interspecies bonding is alien to us, quite literally." "Maybe that's why you don't get it," Jack said. "Humans evolved alongside other animals. We've been connected to them for our entire history." Brenda leaned forward. "You speak with conviction about this animal. Would you say your connection to it is comparable to connections with other humans?" "Different, but just as important," Jack said, feeling Scout's collar in his pocket. "Some days more important." The aliens discussed among themselves in their language for a moment. "We find this concept difficult to accept," Krellex finally said. "It suggests humans form deep psychological attachments based on emotional, rather than rational criteria. This may explain certain inefficiencies in your society." Jack felt his temper rising but kept his voice steady. "With respect, Ambassador, calling something you don't understand an inefficiency seems like a failure of imagination, not a failure of our species." The room went quiet. Lisa looked alarmed, but Jack held Krellex's gaze. After a long moment, the ambassador made a gesture with his long fingers. "Your perspective is noted, Jack Miller. In fact, I would like to continue this discussion further. Would you be willing to return tomorrow for a more focused conversation on this topic?" Jack hadn't expected that. "Yes, I can do that." "Excellent. Please bring evidence of this bond. Images, data, whatever you believe would help us understand." The meeting concluded shortly after. As they left the building, Diane caught up with Jack. "That was brave," she said. "I think you got through to them, at least a little." Jack wasn't so sure. "Maybe, or maybe they just want to study me like a lab rat. Either way, you're coming back?" Jack nodded. "Yeah, I'll be back. Someone needs to make them understand." That night in his motel room, Jack called his sister. "How did it go?" Kate asked. They're so sure they're right about everything, Jack said. They think Scout is just some simple creature that I'm wasting resources on. So what's your plan for tomorrow? Jack looked at the photos he had spread on the bed, pictures of him and Scout over the years, including some from his military days. I'm going to tell them our story, the whole story. Be careful, Jack, Kate said. These are aliens, not people. Who knows how they think? After hanging up, Jack fingered Scout's collar again. He remembered the night Scout had pulled him back from the edge when he'd held his service pistol in his hand, thinking about ending it all. How the dog had nudged his arm until the gun fell away, then licked the tears from his face. I'll make them understand, buddy, he whispered. Somehow, Jack returned to the Xeraxian embassy the next morning. He carried a small folder with photos and his heart felt heavy. Last night, he had called home and asked his neighbor to check on Scout. The dog was fine but restless without him. Lisa Ortega met him at the entrance. She smiled, but her eyes looked worried. Good morning, Jack. I hope you're ready for today's meeting. As ready as I'll ever be, Jack said. Lisa lowered her voice. Just so you know, Commander Drox has joined the meeting today. He's from their military division and, well, he can be more direct than the others. Jack nodded. He had dealt with tough commanders before. This time, Lisa led him to a smaller room. Ambassador Krelix and cultural specialist Vrenda were already seated, along with a new Xeraxian. This one looked different. His skin had darker markings, and he sat with a stiff posture that reminded Jack of his drill sergeant. Jack Miller, this is Commander Drox, Lisa said. Drox did not offer any greeting gesture. His dark eyes simply fixed on Jack with an intensity that felt like a physical touch. Please sit, Ambassador Krelix said. We are interested in exploring this emotional bond concept further. Jack sat down and placed his folder on the table. I brought some photos. He opened the folder and laid out several pictures. The first showed Scout as a puppy, being trained as a service dog. The next few showed them in Afghanistan, Jack in his Marine uniform, Scout wearing his military vest. Your animal served in combat? Drox asked, his translator making the question sound sharp. Yes. Scout was trained to detect explosives and help secure areas. He saved my unit several times. Brenda leaned forward. This is a practical function. We understand using animals for specialized tasks. It was more than that, Jack said, pushing forward another photo. This one showed him in a hospital bed, Scout lying carefully beside him. When I was injured by an IED, Scout stayed with me. The medic said he wouldn't leave my side, even when they tried to move him. Krelix made a gesture with his long fingers. The animal was trained to stay with its handler. No training would make him react like that, Jack insisted. He knew I was hurt. He was worried about me. Drox made a sound that the translator didn't catch. You project emotions onto this creature. Jack felt his jaw tighten but continued. He showed them more photos. Scout helping him during physical therapy. Scout at home with him. When I returned home, I was in a bad place, Jack explained. PTSD, depression. There were nights I didn't think I'd make it to morning. He pulled out one last photo. This one wasn't as clear as the others. Selfie taken in the dark. Jack's face wet with tears, Scout pressed against him. I took this the night I almost killed myself, Jack said quietly. I had my gun out. Scout knocked it away and wouldn't leave me alone until I called the crisis line. The room was silent. Even Lisa looked shocked. The animal prevented your suicide? Vrenda asked finally. Yes. He sensed something was wrong and acted. No training for that, he just knew. Krelix studied the photos again. This connection you describe is stronger than we anticipated. It appears to be a dependency, Vrenda suggested. The human becomes reliant on the animal for emotional stability. It's not dependency, Jack said firmly. It's partnership. Scout needs me too. We take care of each other. Commander Drox picked up one of the photos, studying it with cold eyes. Your attachment to this animal seems excessive. It suggests a weakness in human psychological makeup. Jack felt heat rising in his chest. There's nothing weak about caring for another living being. Perhaps, Drock said, we could better understand this phenomenon by studying the animal directly. A thorough examination of its neural patterns while separated from you would be informative. What do you mean by examination? Jack asked, his voice hardening. Drox's translator conveyed his words in a flat tone. Dissection would provide the most complete data. We could analyze what makes this particular animal so valuable to you. Jack stood up so quickly that his chair fell backward. You want to cut Scout open? To study him? Lisa stepped forward. I'm sure the commander is not suggesting. I am precisely suggesting that, Drox interrupted. This emotional attachment to what is essentially meat with simple neural patterns is the core question. Why do humans value these creatures so highly? The most efficient way to answer would be thorough biological study. Jack's hands formed fists at his sides. Scout is not a specimen to be cut open. He's a living being with feelings, memories, and his own personality. Drox made a gesture that might have been dismissive. You speak of it as if it were sapient. Our scans detect nothing that would suggest complex consciousness in Earth canines. Your scans are wrong, Jack said, his voice dangerously quiet. Or, you're not looking for the right things. Krelix raised a hand. Jack Miller, please understand that we are trying to comprehend this bond from a scientific perspective. Commander Drox's approach, while direct, comes from a place of genuine inquiry. Jack looked at each alien face, seeing nothing there that understood what he was telling them. If you think understanding Scout means killing him, then you understand nothing about what pets mean to humans. He gathered his photos with shaking hands. I think we're done here. This reaction is interesting, Brenda noted, as if observing a lab experiment. The suggestion of harm to the animal produces a stronger response than a threat to the human himself would. You've got that right, Jack said. And you'd better remember it. Humans protect what they love. Commander Drox stood towering over Jack. Your emotional display only confirms our analysis. Humans remain primitive in their attachments, allowing feelings to override reason. No wonder your species has advanced so slowly. Jack stepped closer to the alien commander, looking straight into those dark eyes. If you think caring about other living beings makes us primitive, then you're not as advanced as you think you are. Lisa quickly moved between them. I think we should conclude this session. Thank you for your time, Jack. Jack turned to leave, but Ambassador Krelix spoke. Jack Miller, despite these tensions, your testimony has been valuable. Would you be willing to participate in one more session? A practical demonstration, perhaps? What kind of demonstration? Jack asked, suspicious. Bring your animal, Krelix said. Show us this bond in person. Others will bring their companion animals as well. We wish to observe these relationships directly. Jack hesitated. The thought of bringing Scout anywhere near Commander Drox made his skin crawl. I'll think about it, he said finally. Outside the embassy, Jack took deep breaths of fresh air. His phone buzzed, a text from his sister. How did it go? He didn't answer. Instead, he called his neighbor. Hey Carl, it's Jack. I'm coming home. Tonight. No, the meeting didn't go well. Just make sure Scout is okay until I get there. As he walked to his truck, Jack couldn't shake the cold feeling in his stomach. The way the aliens had talked about Scout, like he was just a thing to be studied, cut apart, analyzed. They don't get it, he muttered as he started the engine. And I'm not sure they ever will. He drove home faster than he should have, thinking about Scout waiting for him, and wondering if he had made things better or worse by coming here. Jack had been home for a week when Lisa Ortega called him. He was out back with Scout throwing a ball across the yard. The dog ran with pure joy, his tail wagging as he brought the ball back to Jack. Hello, Jack. This is Lisa from the Zeraxian Cultural Exchange Program. Jack held the ball and Scout sat at his feet looking up expectantly. I didn't think I'd hear from you again, Jack said. Ambassador Krelix is still interested in that demonstration we discussed, Lisa said. They've invited several pet owners to bring their animals to the embassy. It would be valuable if you and Scout could attend. Jack threw the ball again, watching Scout race after it. I'm not sure that's a good idea after last time. I understand your concerns, Lisa said, but this is different. They genuinely want to understand. And Commander Drox won't be present for this session. So he got fired for suggesting he cut open people's pets? Jack asked. Not exactly, but he has been reassigned. The ambassador was disturbed by his approach. Jack considered this as Scout returned with the ball. When would this be? 3 days from now. We can arrange transportation for you both. After the call ended, Jack sat on his porch steps. Scout rested his head on Jack's knee, brown eyes looking up at him. What do you think, buddy? Should we go show these aliens what a dog is really about? Scout's tail thumped against the wooden step. Yeah, that's what I thought you'd say. 3 days later, a sleek government car arrived at Jack's cabin. The driver loaded Jack's bag and Scout's supplies, and they began the long drive to Denver. Scout lay calmly in the back seat, occasionally looking out the window. Jack kept his hand on the dog's back, feeling the steady rise and fall of his breathing. When they arrived at the embassy, Jack was surprised to see several other people with animals outside. A middle-aged woman held a cat carrier. An older man stood with a golden retriever. A young woman had a parrot perched on her shoulder. Lisa greeted them all. Thank you for coming. The ambassador is eager to observe your bonds with your animals firsthand. They were led to a large room with comfortable seating and open space for the animals. Jack noticed small sensors placed around the room and wondered what they were measuring. Ambassador, Krillix entered with Vrenda and 2 other Xeraxians Jack hadn't seen before. They moved around the edges of the room, observing carefully. Welcome, Krillix said. We appreciate your willingness to demonstrate your relationships with these companion species. The humans introduced themselves and their pets. The woman with the cat was Ruth, and her orange tabby was named Marmalade. The older man was Paul with his retriever Sunny. The young woman with the parrot was Gina, and her bird was called Echo. Jack Miller, Jack said simply, and this is Scout. The aliens watched as the humans interacted naturally with their pets. Ruth let Marmalade out of his carrier, and the cat immediately explored the room. Paul had Sunny demonstrate some tricks. Gina showed how Echo could mimic words and sounds. When it was Jack's turn, he simply sat on the floor. Scout lay next to him, pressed against his side. Scout and I don't do tricks, Jack explained. He was a service dog. Our connection is different. Could you demonstrate? Vrenda asked. Jack nodded. He stood up and walked to the far side of the room. Scout, come. Scout trotted over immediately. Sit. The dog sat. Stay. Jack walked away and Scout remained perfectly still. Jack moved to the other side of the room. Scout, to me. The dog raced to his side. These are simple commands, Krillix observed. Many Earth species can be trained to respond to vocal cues. The commands aren't the point, Jack said. He knelt beside Scout. The point is that he chooses to follow them because he trusts me. One of the new Xeraxians approached. Our scans show changes in your neural patterns when you interact with this animal. Your brain produces oxytocin and dopamine, similar to human pair bonding responses. That's the science of it, I guess, Jack said. But it doesn't capture everything. Vrenda tilted her head. What is missing from our analysis? Jack thought for a moment. It's like trying to understand music by studying sound waves. You can measure everything about the sound, but that doesn't tell you why it makes people cry or laugh or dance. The Xeraxians conferred among themselves in their language. Then Krillix turned to the group. We would like to conduct a more thorough observation. Would you permit us to separate you from your companion animals briefly? We wish to measure stress responses. The pet owners looked uncertain. What exactly would that involve? Paul asked. Simply moving the animals to an adjoining room for a short period while we monitor your physiological responses, Vrenda explained. Before anyone could answer, a new Xeraxian entered the room. Jack recognized him instantly, the tall, imposing figure of Commander Drox. I see the demonstration is proceeding, Drox said. His dark eyes scanned the room, lingering on the animals. Jack stood up. I thought you weren't going to be here. Lisa stepped forward quickly. Commander Drox was not scheduled to attend today. I have authority to observe all experiments involving potential security implications, Drox said. His translator made the words sound harsh. Krelix made a gesture that seemed conciliatory. Commander Drox will only observe. Jack didn't like it, but he nodded stiffly. Scout sensed his tension and pressed against his leg. Now, Drox said, I suggest we modify the protocol. A simple separation doesn't provide enough data. He moved toward the center of the room. We should simulate danger to truly test these bonds. What kind of danger? Jack asked sharply. Nothing harmful, Drox said. But if these animals truly protect you as you claim, we should see it demonstrated. Before anyone could object, Drox signaled to two Xeraxian security personnel who had entered quietly. They moved to take the animals. One reached for Scout. The dog growled, backing up against Jack. He doesn't like strangers handling him, Jack warned. The second Xeraxian approached. From the other side, Scout's growl deepened. Suddenly, Commander Drox moved quickly toward Jack, his arm raised in what could have been interpreted as a threatening gesture. Scout exploded into action. He lunged between Jack and Drox, barking fiercely, teeth bared. The security personnel moved in. One grabbed Scout's collar. The dog yelped. Jack saw red. His marine training took over. He moved without thinking, twisting the guard's arm away from Scout. The second guard reached for Jack. Jack ducked and drove his shoulder into the alien's midsection, sending him staggering backward. A third guard approached. Jack struck out, with a precise blow that dropped the alien to his knees. The room erupted into chaos. The other pets reacted to the commotion. The cat hissed and clawed. The parrot screeched and flew around the room. The golden retriever barked loudly. Stop. This immediately, Krelix commanded. Jack stood protectively over Scout, breathing hard, ready to fight anyone else who came near his dog. The room fell silent except for Scout's continued growling. All eyes were on Jack and the three guards he had disabled in less than 10 seconds. Commander Drox stared at Jack with what might have been surprise in those alien eyes. Fascinating, he said finally. The human moved faster than our security protocols anticipated. You don't touch my dog, Jack said, his voice deadly quiet. Ever. The room was frozen in silence. Jack knelt beside Scout, checking him for injuries. The dog seemed unhurt but remained alert, his eyes fixed on the Xeraxians. Lisa Ortega looked shocked. The other pet owners stood with their animals, watching the scene with wide eyes. You attacked diplomatic security personnel, Commander Drox said finally. This is a serious offense. Jack stood up slowly. You threatened my dog. Where I come from, that's a serious offense too. Ambassador Krelix stepped forward, his long fingers making a calming gesture. There has been a misunderstanding. Commander Drox, this demonstration was to be observational only. I enhanced the protocol to gather more meaningful data. Drox replied. The results are quite informative. The results, Jack said angrily, are that you almost got yourself bitten and 3 of your guards taken down. All because you couldn't understand a simple concept. Don't threaten something a human loves. Krelix turned to the other pet owners. Please accept our apologies for this incident. Would you allow our medical staff to check your companion animals to ensure they are unharmed? Ruth clutched her cat carrier tighter. I think we'd better leave. Paul nodded, his hand on Sonny's head. Same here. Gina had managed to get Echo back onto her shoulder. The parrot's feathers were ruffled, but the bird seemed calm now. This wasn't what we agreed to. Krelix looked troubled. I understand. Transportation will be arranged immediately. As the others were escorted out, Lisa approached Jack. Jack, Ambassador Krelix has requested that you remain for a brief discussion if you're willing. Jack looked down at Scout, who had calmed but stayed vigilant at his side. Is he going to be safe? Yes, Lisa assured him. Commander Drox will not be present. Jack hesitated, then nodded. All right, but Scout stays with me. Lisa led Jack and Scout to a small, comfortable room. Ambassador Krelix and Vrenda were waiting. A third Xeraxian Jack hadn't seen before stood quietly in the corner. "Please sit," Krellick said. "This is Elder Scientist Mechthal. He has been studying your species since our arrival." Jack sat on a couch, and Scout jumped up beside him, settling against his leg. "First, I must offer an apology," Krellick said. "Commander?" Drox exceeded his authority. His actions were not approved. Jack nodded but didn't speak. "That said," Krellick continued, "the incident has provided us with valuable insights." "Like what?" Jack asked. Elder Scientist Mechthal stepped forward. "Like the fact that your reaction time was 2.3 times faster than our security protocols anticipated for a human, and that your combative effectiveness was significantly enhanced when defending your companion animal compared to typical human baseline performance." "Adrenaline," Jack said simply, "happens when someone you care about is in danger." "Indeed," Mechthal replied. "But there is something more fundamental here that we have been missing." Vrenda opened a display that hovered in the air between them. It showed brain scans of Jack and Scout, with certain areas highlighted. "We have been studying your neural patterns," she explained. "What we found was unexpected. The connection between you and this animal is not just emotional in nature. There are synchronized responses in your nervous systems that suggest a form of communication we did not previously recognize." Jack looked at the floating images. "I told you Scout understands me." "Yes," Krellick said, "but we did not truly comprehend what that meant until now." Mechthal gestured, and the display changed to show more images. "We have a ritual in our culture, a sacred connection to what you might call our ancestral spirits. For millennia, we believed this connection was unique to our species, a sign of our advanced evolution." The images showed patterns similar to those between Jack and Scout. "You're saying what I have with Scout is like your sacred ritual?" Jack asked. "The neural patterns are remarkably similar," Mechthal confirmed. "It appears that humans have evolved a capacity for deep connection that extends beyond your own species. This is most unexpected. It also challenges our understanding of intelligence," Krellick added. "We have defined it primarily as technological advancement and problem-solving capability. But perhaps true intelligence includes the capacity for connection across species boundaries." Jack looked down at Scout, who had fallen asleep against his leg, finally relaxed now that the danger had passed. "I could have told you that," he said quietly. "Yes," Vrenda agreed. "And you did tell us. We simply lacked the framework to understand." Krellick made a formal gesture with both hands. "The Xeraxian Federation wishes to extend an official apology for our dismissal of human-animal bonds. We now recognize this as an important aspect of your species' development, not a hindrance to it." Jack was surprised by the shift. "Thank you. That means a lot. Furthermore," Krellick continued, "we would like to recognize your companion animal, Scout, with the designation of Honored Companion Being, the first non-sapient creature to receive such recognition from our people." Lisa, who had been quiet until now, looked stunned. "Ambassador, that's an unprecedented honor." "These are unprecedented times," Krellick replied. "Our meeting with Earth has challenged many of our assumptions." Jack smiled and stroked Scout's fur. "He'd probably prefer a stake to a title, but thank you. That can be arranged as well," Krellick said, with what might have been the Xeraxian equivalent of a smile. 3 months later, Jack sat on his porch watching the sunset. Scout lay beside him, gray now showing around his muzzle, but his eyes still bright. Jack's phone buzzed. It was a message from Lisa with a photo attached. The image showed Commander Drox with a small, furry creature perched on his shoulder. The text read, "Thought you'd appreciate this. The first batch of companion animals engineered for Xeraxian biology. Guess who volunteered to be first?" Jack laughed and showed the phone to Scout. "Look at that, buddy. You started something big." On the news that evening, there was a story about the new cultural exchange program. Humans were teaching Xeraxians about animal companionship, while the aliens shared their technology. The reporter mentioned that applications for the program had increased tenfold since the Scout incident, as it was now called. "You're famous, Scout," Jack said. "How does it feel?" Scout just yawned and rested his head on Jack's foot. Later, as Jack got ready for bed, he heard a low growl from Scout. Looking outside, he saw lights in the sky, a Xeraxian shuttle on its way to the new joint research facility being built outside of town. "It's okay, boy. They're friends now." Scout settled down, watching the lights fade into the distance. Jack thought about how much had changed because of one dog and one moment of fierce protection. How an advanced alien species had learned something important from a simple bond between a man and his dog. "You know what's funny, Scout?" Jack said as he turned off the light. "They came all this way thinking they had everything to teach us. Turns out we had something important to teach them." Scout's tail thumped against the bed in agreement. As Jack drifted off to sleep, he felt Scout shift to press against his side. A warm, living reminder that sometimes the most powerful forces in the universe weren't advanced technology or interstellar travel. Sometimes they were as simple as love.